My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our DUK Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. A big thank you once again to DUK for bringing you this podcast. DUK Premium Performance Sport 3020 is the blend that I feed my dogs here at the kennel and also my personal dogs, not only throughout the hunting season, but all year round. And I love that feed. I see the benefits of it, and I would highly recommend it to anyone out there that's looking for a high-quality premium food to put your four-legged hunting partner on. Also, thank you to Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck just released the only, I believe, large 5-star crash test rated kennel out there. They also have their intermediate, which is also 5-star crash test rated. Great kennels, and a lot of good people inside that company. So go check them out, www.luckyduck.com. Also, thank you to Sitka Gear. Sitka, I've said it that it's changed the way that I hunt and I train. It might sound a little cheesy, but it is certainly true. You are more productive in whatever you're doing when you're comfortable. And Sitka has done that for me. So Sitka Gear, www.sitkagear.com. Go check them out. You will be happy that you did so. All right. So another week here, and this is actually going to be kind of a chill episode for me because we have a rain day here. And this is the first year that I haven't just powered through and pushed through rain days. And, we still get our work done. We just do it in a much different manner. We're not out there, when like right now it's a thunderstorm, and hopefully you guys don't have any interference in the background. I've gotten the quietest room that I can get in. But we used to, power through things in a safe way, but power through it. And, this year, I just think we're being a little more strategic with it, and it is definitely paying off. Like for me, being able to have the extra time to catch up on this stuff, catch up on extra communication from clients and prospective clients and puppy clients. I mean, there's just, a lot of time that I can get caught up on, on these days. And then, it just frees my mind to focus more on, on the task at hand when we're out, less juggling. So this is a rain day here that I'm able to sit down and spend a little more time, doing this and talking with you all. But today I want to go over a topic idea that came in from a gentleman I want to talk about a little bit. And his name is Scott, and Scott has become a very, very close friend of mine. And I've talked about it before, on this podcast, how these dogs have just brought people together, and some of my closest friends are because of the dogs. And Scott was a really kind of a fun, progression as far as our friendship went, because I can laugh about it. When he and I first met, so he had sent me a number of emails, and he had told me about this chocolate lab that he had gotten. He had named it Chipper, and he had gotten this chocolate lab because of me and Easton. He had read about Easton, had heard all the accolades and heard the stories and heard everything that Easton and I did, and that's what made him want to get a chocolate lab. I know there's people out there like, wait, you don't breed chocolates, and I don't. And I feel like there's just very few, much fewer really good chocolates out there than blacks or yellows. And I just really like to stay, true to my blacks and yellows. But Easton, who was my first dog, was a chocolate. And so Scott, the first time I ever met Scott, I was giving a seminar out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It was at Great American Outdoor Show. And at that show, if you've ever been there, the arena, that I'm talking about, but you're in basically an arena where it's almost 365, or not 365, good groove, 360 degrees, where people are stacked up in the bleachers, in the stands. They're standing at the fence, and this is one of those deals that, for me, it's very important that I have a dog that can handle this. Not every dog can just step into a situation like that. Just like people, right? Like you can have someone that can sit and BS to anyone that you sit at the kitchen table at, but you put them in front of 100 or 1,000 people, all of a sudden they just don't have the same flair, the same talk, the same gift of gab. And dogs are very much that way. You wouldn't think of it, but I've done this so much over the years that I have found that some dogs just don't like being in front of crowds. And not only that, but you need to have a dog that is going to stay focused. You need to have a dog that is going to add some personality and not be a robot. There's a lot there that goes into having a very good dog in a show situation. And I don't know why, but it's like there are always every show, the clowns that are at the side, they're like, whistling at the dog, being like, come here. And I'm like, come on. I'm up here trying to do a job. I'm trying to talk. I'm trying to, put on a show, if you will, some kind of an entertainment factor. And you're here trying to call the dog, to you. I mean, come on, but this is the kind of stuff we have to deal with. So Scott was at the fence, so, right at the first row, and he was kind of heckling me a little bit, being like, hey, Josh, Josh, come here. And I'm trying to get focused. I'm turning around. I'm like, hey man, like, I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards. And, he was really nice. He's like, I just have one question for you. And so I go over and he's like, hey, just wanted you to know that, I'm Scott. I'm the one that's been sending you the messages, the emails. And I was like, oh, cool. So we got to meet, whatever. And, I had no idea the friendship that would blossom out of that interaction. And so Scott ends up sending Chipper in for training. He then sends his next dog, Lola, in for training. And I ran Chipper in competitions, and he was a very, very, very good dog. And like looking back, when Scott and I first had that first interaction, like he had, I don't think anyways, had never really owned a gun dog before, was interested in it. And Scott has a personality that he's not going to go, half-assed in anything. It's, full bore or nothing. So he goes naturally full bore into this. And he not only has, developed his own kennel now. He's having a couple litters, puppies, here and there. He can probably tell you every pedigree of every dog that has ever walked the face of the earth, because he's just a nerd about that stuff. But he has actually gone and become very involved with the UKC. He actually developed and put into motion the UKC elite shed dog competitions. Like he created that. And sometimes the reason I want to give that shout out is that I feel like that's underappreciated. Like I know behind the scenes, because he would send me questions and ask my advice on stuff, and so I know all the work that went into that. And so Scott, on behalf of everyone that will ever run that thing, thank you for that time, because that's pretty awesome that you did that. And it's just kind of been a fun progression, watching him grow up in the gun dog side of things. Now he has seen the light, and he is now running British line dogs, and I'm helping him with his dogs. We're talking about dogs from overseas and those lines and how they're different than the American lines and all stuff. And so it's really fun. But anyway, Scott. So this message, I got this message over the weekend, and thought it'd be a great topic, because, well, let me read it to you, because I can talk about why I think it's great after this. So he sends me a message, and he's like, hey, I've got this episode, topic for you. I think it would be really good. And he goes, why don't you spend some time talking about your failures, what you learned from them? And some ideas he had is, talk about the dogs you cut from your program and why. Talk about the ones that you didn't think would make it, but ended up becoming amazing dogs. this is like, and it goes on, but I'm going to stop there. This is a super cool topic for me because for the longest time, I was like completely petrified of failure. It was the one thing that I would avoid talking about. I would avoid admitting to. I was afraid, genuinely afraid of failure. And, through, a few life lessons, I've learned to embrace it. I mean, I've failed time and time and time again, whether it is, with dogs, whether it's with clients, whether it's with business ventures, whether it's, what have you, like I have failed a lot. And I think where, to me, my mindset changed, and you'll see where I'm going with this, with as far as it goes with the dogs, where my mindset shifted into embracing and thriving on failure was, you've heard me talk about ball in the past, but it was through baseball. And so go back to my freshman year of college, you go from, the, big fish in the small pond, and all of a sudden you're just another fish in a big pond. And I had a pretty rough first couple weeks of fall ball, and fall ball was a wood bat league that we would do internally, and it was a lot of a lot of team building, a lot of giving the coaches something to think about, kind of laying a baseline of here's what we want you to be doing over the winter to progress for the spring season, and I struggled, and I think every at bat that I had that I was not successful, at, I chalked it up to a failure, and I would get more stressed out and more nervous, and I think as baseball is such a mental game, I was inside my own head, and so through fall ball we would have meetings set up with the coaches, and they would have our whole, batting chart. They'd have, notes on what, they wanted to talk about. And my coach, during my meeting, we're sitting there, and he's like, what's going on with you? You are not the same, player that I scouted and I watched, come up, and, it's not your ability, it is your head. So what's going on? And he's thinking like, I'm having a hard time transitioning to school, or, girl problems, or like something like that. And and he had a way that, for whatever reason, for me, I could open up with him more than maybe I could have with maybe anybody else up to that point in my life. And so we started talking. I was like, yeah, I'm frustrated. I want to be, doing better. I know I can do better. And he flat out asked me, he said, what are you afraid of? And that was my response, was failing. My biggest fear that I have here is coming here and failing. And he told me something. I've seen this quote kind of here and there, but he told me something that forever in my head will be coming out of his mouth, which is, he said, Josh, failure is inevitable. But the difference between winners and losers is how they respond to that failure. That moment, didn't realize it at the time, but that changed the way that I thought about life from there forward. So fast forward, obviously I'm rethinking things now, and I went on to have a great second half of fall ball. Finished strong, went into the off season, with a great plan, great, workout, schedule, knew what I wanted to improve on, knew the steps I had to take. Come to spring, we are going into our first game. And so we're playing, we're playing in Minnesota. We're playing at the Metrodome, for those of you that remember the Dome. And it was really interesting. At that time, they had they had games going literally 24/7 from colleges. I'm sure probably high schools too, but colleges were all that we really cared about at the time. And, from basically everyone in the Midwest, because there just wasn't a whole lot of places to play. And so, because it's still winter, we're starting our season. Yeah, I think we're starting like March and maybe even February. I can't remember for sure, but a lot of schools, would play, and a lot of schools would rotate through. And so we went there, and I remember before we got on the bus, Coach actually posted the lineup before we got on the bus. And I was hitting 2. The only freshman in the lineup definitely had a little bit of holy cow moment. Like, okay, now, you better cowboy up now, because this is real, right? And I remember probably being the most intimidated that I had probably ever been, just because of the moment, because of the lights, because of everything that was going on. So, first batter up, strikes out. I come up, which it was just like great. Like the senior leadoff hitter ahead of me just struck out. Now I got to be the one to follow it up. So I step into the box. I do my deal. I have my routine. Did the same exact routine every single pitch. That was part of the mental approach. Same exact routine. Look down at third. I get a take sign. Step in. It was my pitch. Take, strike 1. Okay. Look down at the line. Take sign. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? But, maybe he's got a bigger plan. Step into the box, breaking ball. Blowing away, great pitch, strike 2. So now I look down to third, and my coach gives me like this, like facial expression and like shrug your shoulders, like, well, now what? And I remember looking at him going, you just dug me an 0-2 count. And like, this is what you're going to give me now? So I turn and I dig in. And it was so, like, everything was in slow motion for me at that point. Because like in my head, the first thought was, poor me. Right? The first thought was, like, you screwed me. Like, you put me in such a bad position. Like, how am I supposed to fight out of this? So as I'm digging back in, the thought of, are you a winner or are you a loser, popped into my head. And that like, it was incredible how a thought can completely change your mental approach. Okay. So I remember scooting up a little in the box. I remember, choking up a little bit, and I was going to fight. Like, that's what I was going to do. I fouled off 7 pitches. 7, what you could call them strikes. I do believe there were 2 balls in there. Ended up being a super long at bat. And I ended up taking a fastball and just ripping it down the first base line. Double. That was my first at bat. My first college at bat was a double. Now, coaches would probably, not only probably, they told me, like, that was great. You took that outside pitch. You ripped. Like, I feel like I was pretty behind that ball. I was 100% expecting a breaking ball. I think I was behind it, but it looked great, and I took the compliment. But later on, as we did every week, we meet with our coaches. I mean, I asked him about, I'm like, what was up with the 2 take signs? And he's like, I thought he was going to be a little more aggressive. I thought if I could get you a more beneficial count, that would help you. I also wanted you to see some pitches. Like, this is your first collegiate game. Like, I wanted to see pitches. Then he told what I think is a fib, which he's like, but I also wanted to put you in a spot where I could see how you would handle the adversity. Now, you will never, ever convince me that he intentionally put me in a 0-2 count. But that was as it worked out, it sounded great. So where I'm going with this is these failures as we look at them, and this is how I learned to look at them. They're only failures if you accept it, roll over, and say, I'm out. A learning experience isn't a failure. Just because something didn't work out the way you wanted it to, it's not a failure. This is so important for your mental approach when you are going through your training. You are going to have failures likely way more often than you're going to have successes. But it's also because of those failures that you will appreciate the success. This is what I can't remember if I talked about this in an episode or two back, but I had talked about the difference in when someone sends a dog in for training and has me go through the work, and I go through those peaks and valleys and ebbs and flows with the dogs, and I overcome the hurdles with them, and I have the success, if you will, with them, versus you doing it at home. I just think there's a tremendous appreciation for the process, for the end result, and for the success when you are the one doing it with your dog. It's a different feel. It's a different vibe when someone comes in after I've done the work, right? There's like this expectation of, well, now it better be perfect. Now it better work. It should, this dog should just run this blind. This dog should whistle sit every time. This dog should take a perfect cast. Well, we all know it's not going to work that way. But when you've done the work, you don't look at that as a failure. You look at that as I wonder why they did that. Let's work on it. Mindset. Like, your mental approach is a big part of this. And so, as I look at the failure side of things, like I said, we could talk about a lot of things. We could talk about, business ventures that haven't gone the way that I've wanted them to. We could talk about, a number of things. Let's talk about dogs, right? That's why you guys are here. Let's talk about dogs. There are two dogs that come into mind, because one of the things that Scott had asked here is, talk about the dogs you cut from your program and why. Talk about the ones you didn't think would make it and ended up being amazing. And so I could talk about a lot of dogs as I go through this. Some of the dogs that I would like to talk about are client dogs. I'm not going to talk about those because I think this could be a 4-hour podcast here. But I'm going to talk about two dogs that I've picked out in particular. The first one being a dog named Gus. Gus was a dog that I brought in from overseas. I had one of my very good friends from overseas had told me about this dog a long time ago. I had actually never had the pleasure of meeting this dog. I like to see the dogs, I like to know the dogs before bringing them in if at all possible. But my friend was very complimentary of this dog, said, this is a dog for you. This is a dog you're going to love. So we got Gus, and when we brought him over, like initially I did love him. Loved his temperament. He was a smaller build dog, which I know for so many people, they love that smaller build. I do like a little bigger build just because, like, where I hunt a lot of big geese. I hunt a lot of flooded, timber, flooded fields. Well, splash water turns to lunge water quicker for a short-legged dog. Lunge water turns into swim water, right? I mean, fighting over logs and sticks and debris is harder for a shorter-legged dog. Now, every other day of the year, like easier to ride in your truck, easier to sit in the boat. So there's pros and cons, right? So if I'm being picky, as I always am, like I would have loved for him to be a little bigger, build, a little bigger frame, but he was great. He handled, as he went through his handling, he ended up handling very well. He ended up, you talk to 99 out of 100 people, they would have absolutely loved this dog. But there's like this naggy feeling that I had that was like, he's just not right. Like, he's just not like, he's not what I want. And I couldn't quite honestly put my finger on what it was. His mouth was fantastic. He had good pop. He had great off switch. He had, very intelligent. But I could not put my finger on like what exactly it was. Well, I found out what it was, which is as we were going through everything, like, I always want my dogs to have that extra gear. You never know if your dog has the extra gear until it's time to get there. Like, there's a lot of work that has to get done to even get there. Most dogs, quite frankly, don't ever get all the way through to the point that you could even find out if they do. And you can't say, oh, I know that they do, I just didn't put in the work. No, you don't. And this is a great example why. This dog had done everything. He was a hunting retriever champion. He had walked through his tests. He had gone through everything I'd asked him to. But when it was time to go that next level, when I say that next level, I mean like we get into the real stuff, the real situations, right? Like, very rough weather hunting-wise. We get into, I'm going to ask you to do a 300-400 yard blind, now. I'm going to, like, he would do it, but just not with what I wanted. Like, he had it, just didn't have the extra gear that I'm looking for. It broke my heart to place Gus with what is now his forever home. So Gus actually lives out in Las Vegas with a fantastic person, and he waterfowl hunts all over the place. He and Gus travel everywhere waterfowl hunting, and he loves that dog, as he should. He is a great dog. He's a very good dog. Yeah, he's a great dog. He is a great dog. But for me and my breeding program, I am looking for special. And that's what held me back on him. And it was hard. And every single time that I have to do that, and this is where I believe this is what separates us into the puppies that we are producing. There are very few people that I believe would take the bath that I took financially in moving him on. That hurt. Gus had been with me for about a year because he had to go through all of his, his training. He became a big part of my family, a big part of my life. That hurt. But unfortunately for me, being that this is not only my passion but my business, if I kept every dog that I fell in love with, I'd have 34, 35 dogs probably right now. Can't do that. So you need to make tough decisions. So Lemonade, out of Lemons, I was able to provide someone with a gun dog of an absolute lifetime. And he's going on to live a fantastic life. But that was a tough one. And that was a dog that from day one, I thought was going to work out. Not a failure. Just, that's what having high standards, incredibly high standards does. It forces you to make tough decisions. So now I want to go to the dog that I want to talk about. That was the opposite. Ironically enough, came over at the exact same time as Gus. So when we bring dogs in from overseas, ideally, we'd like to bring 2 to 3 in at a time because it's just more cost efficient for us to bring multiple in rather than one at a time. Plus, it's just time consuming going and picking them up, everything like that. And so if we can do that, we oftentimes do. So along with Gus, who was a black lab, I don't know if I mentioned his color, came another black lab named Bud. And from day one, I thought Bud was a complete knucklehead. Now, I know Bud's previous owner very well. I had met Bud before. I really wanted a different dog that he owned, but he was going to keep that dog. And I really liked Bud, right? Really, I think I've talked about that in the past. Like, I wanted to buy Bud. Like, I really liked him. I loved his, build, loved his, personality, all stuff, but I didn't train with him. So now, we get, but you know what? I lied. I did train with him, but it's different when you're working with the dog versus somebody else, right? So I guess I had trained with him. That was a lie. But hadn't worked with him myself. So get these dogs over again. Loved Gus right away. And Bud, the reason that I was just not sold on Bud right away was he was a different personality than what I normally drive with. So Easton, who I mentioned early on, my first, big powerhouse, he was all business all the time. If we were working. Don't mess with me. Don't love on me. Don't let me work. Brock's that same way. Clyde's that same way. I get along with dogs like that because I'm that way. When I'm working, just get out of my way. Let me do this. I want to do this really well. I don't want to be distracted. I'm not going to stop and I don't want to stop and talk with you. I don't want to stop and fluff up, hoorah. I want to be the best that I can be being, and that takes my undivided attention. Bud is not like that. Bud is very much, hey, I'll go crush this blind, but if I get back with it and you want to love up on me, I'm going to soak that up. And I'm going to love on you, and I'm going to love every second of it. And then, oh, okay, it's back to work. Okay, we'll do that. Very different. And so in my head, perception-wise, he wasn't going to have what it took because he wasn't, he wasn't all in is kind of the way I looked at it, right? Well, what allowed me to be successful, so Whitney, let me back up for a second. Whitney was in love with Bud. Loved Bud. And that's really what kept me focused on, I got to give him a shot. Now, my plan was I was going to finish his training and I was going to then sell Bud. In my head, I was keeping Gus, which obviously flip-flopped. But at the time, that was a plan. Well, Bud starts going through this stuff, and he's making things look easy. And he's very natural mouth, great marker, very trusting in when we got into our lining. If I point him a direction, he was like, all right, we'll do this. Wasn't a big fighter as far as if I said, run to pile 1, and he's like, nope, I'm going to 2. I say, no, you're going to 1. Yeah, he wasn't. That dog's going to sit there and fight me every step of the way. He was a team player. I would say today, Bud is that dog that most people gravitate to. Most people, because, a lot of times when people come out to the kennel, I'll run all the dogs for them, and they're all very impressive. They all will do anything you ask them to do. They all have the titles. They all have the accomplishments. They all have everything. Bud just has this personality. And it took a mental change or a mind shift on my end to say, okay, so how do I change to work with Bud? And the way that I look at this is a high school coach. I think there's a lot of very poor high school coaches out there, no matter what sport it is. And I think the biggest thing that holds coaches back is they take the kids that they have that year and they go, this is how you're going to play this game. Instead of looking at this going, in my situation, I don't get to pick my players. I don't get to draft them. I don't get to recruit them. So I need to adapt into what my strengths are this year and what is best for this group. That's what I did with Bud. I had a different mental approach. He was not that dog that was going to be, I'm just going to make you do this. You're going to learn this way. Like, I had to change. But what it did is it helped me become a better trainer. It helped me become a better communicator. And this is something that I believe I've been able to do over the years is learn how to do this better. And especially when you train dogs for the public, you need to be able to do this. But I would argue that you at home need to be able to do this if this is your second or third or fourth or whatever dog. If it's your first dog, different story. But if it is your second, you are likely learning, if you have not learned already, this dog is not your first dog. It's probably a different mindset. It's probably a different motor. It probably communicates differently. It probably needs to be coached differently. You can't just take what you learned from that first dog and say, you're going to do this the exact same way. You are not going to be as successful with that dog as if you took a step back and you said, hey, what do I need to do to best communicate with you? How do I get the most out of you? That mindset and that shift, that's what made Gus and Bud flip-flop, in my opinion. Because Bud has it. Bud has the extra gear. He has the extra motor. He has everything that I want, everything that I'm looking for. Now, if I wouldn't have given him the chance and just wrote him off early on, I would have made an incredible mistake. And when it comes to failures, I think what's so interesting to me is how afraid we are of anything that comes up with our dog that could be perceived as a failure. We deal with this all the time with our clients because, naturally they're not here every day seeing, things happen. So when we give our weekly reports, we tell them, hey, here's what's going on. If there's anything negative in there, 9 times out of 10, it's a panic. It's a, well, how is this happening? And what are you going to do to fix it? And, well, that's our job. There's never a flat road. There's never a, hey, from start to finish, there's no bumps, there's no hurdles, there's no hills. It's just a smooth sail. But I think some of this comes from humanizing our 4-legged kids and going, well, they have to be perfect. Like my dog wouldn't do that. Well, they did. Let's find a way to make this right. Let's find a way to get them better at this. Let's find a way to overcome the hurdle. I mean, that's what we do. And I think at home, as you go through this process, that's one of the things that you need to do. Your mental approach needs to be right to be able to get over the hurdles. Embrace the hurdles. Enjoy the hurdles. Because when you get over them, it's fun to look back and say, hey, remember just 2 weeks ago when we thought this would never happen? Like, now we're crushing it. And then fast forward again, come fall, when you're able to apply it in the field and you go, hey, I did that. Like, as a team, of course, but you made that possible. It's a pretty cool thing. It's really neat, to look at it that way. Because I do believe that if you don't embrace the failures, if you don't, love the failures, then you're going to be sadly disappointed. You're going to be frustrated, and this is going to be an unpleasant process. So, my advice would be a winner. Embrace that failure. Don't roll over. Don't get frustrated. Don't get heavy-handed. Don't do something you're going to regret. Take a step back, make a game plan on how to get over it, and go win. Because you'll see it come fall. I'd like to thank Gun Dog Supply, if I haven't already. Gun Dog Supply, your one-stop shop for all of your dog training and hunting needs. And I appreciate you guys, spending time with me. Scott, another shout out to you. Thank you so much, buddy, for the topic. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. And we will see you guys here again next week. I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to Eukanuba, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.